Hey, welcome to Socialism for All. This file is being recorded for the August 2022 edition of Socialism for All, and it's an audiobook and discussion of two pieces by Lenin, the National Equality Bill and National Equality from March and April 1914, respectively. If you like this video, please click like and subscribe, and consider supporting on Patreon at patreon.com/socialismforall. There's a link to Patreon in the video description. So the first piece, the National Equality Bill, was published in Put Pravdy, number 48, March 28, 1914, and published here according to the text in Put Pravdy. The source is Lenin Collected Works, Progress Publishers, 1972, Moscow, Volume 20, translated by Bernard Isaacs and the late Joe Feinberg, HTML transcription and markup by R. Simbala, and it's in the public domain at the Lenin Internet Archive within the Marxists Internet Archive, Marxists.org. Thanks as usual to MIA for hosting this and thousands of other free Marxist texts. So let's begin the National Equality Bill. Comrades, the Russian Social Democratic Labor Group in the Duma, Parliament, has decided to introduce in the Fourth Duma a bill to abolish the disabilities of the Jews and other non-Russians. Comment, by disabilities, he means discrimination against. That will be clear in a second. Anyway, continuing. The text of this bill you will find below. The bill aims at abolishing all national restrictions against all nations, Jews, Poles, and so forth. But it deals in particular detail with the restrictions against the Jews. The reason is obvious. No nationality in Russia is so oppressed and persecuted as the Jewish. Anti-Semitism is striking ever deeper root among the propertied classes. The Jewish workers are suffering under a double yoke, both as workers and as Jews. During the past few years, the persecution of the Jews has assumed incredible dimensions. It is sufficient to recall the anti-Jewish pogroms and the Bilas case. In view of these circumstances, organized Marxists must devote proper attention to the Jewish question. It goes without saying that the Jewish question can effectively be solved only together with the fundamental issues confronting Russia today. Obviously, we do not look to the nationalist Purishkevich Fourth Duma to abolish the restrictions against the Jews and other non-Russians. Comment, Purishkevich was the name of a very far-right politician. But it is in the duty of the working class to make its voice heard, and the voice of the Russian workers must be particularly loud in protest against national oppression. In publishing the text of our bill, we hope that the Jewish workers, the Polish workers, and the workers of the other oppressed nationalities will express their opinion of it and propose amendments, should they deem it necessary. At the same time, we hope that the Russian workers will give particularly strong support to our bill by their declarations, etc. In conformity with Article 4, we shall append to the bill a special list of regulations and laws to be rescinded. This appendix will cover about 100 such laws affecting the Jews alone. So, now the text. A bill for the abolition of all disabilities of the Jews and of all restrictions on the grounds of origin or nationality. 1. Citizens of all nationalities inhabiting Russia are equal before the law. 2. No citizen of Russia, regardless of sex and religion, may be restricted in political or in any other rights on the grounds of origin or nationality. 3. All and any laws, provisional regulations, riders to laws, and so forth, which impose restrictions upon Jews in any sphere of social and political life, are herewith abolished. Article 767, Volume 9, which states that, quote, Jews are subject to the general laws in all cases where no special regulations affecting them have been issued, unquote, is herewith repealed. All and any restrictions of the rights of Jews as regards residence and travel, the right to education, the right to state and public employment, electoral rights, military service, the right to purchase and rent real estate in towns, villages, etc., are herewith abolished, and all restrictions of the rights of Jews to engage in the liberal professions, etc., are herewith abolished. 4. To the present law is appended a list of the laws, orders, provisional regulations, etc., that limit the rights of the Jews and which are subject to repeal. And that's the end of the text. The list of appended laws, orders, etc. to be repealed is not included in this text and probably would be fairly tedious. I'm sure you can find it somewhere if you look. So before moving on to the next text, National Equality, let's just summarize what was said by Lenin here. So there is a footnote from MIA. It says, the National Equality Bill, the official title of the Bill for the Abolition of All Disabilities of the Jews and of All Restrictions on the Grounds of Origin or Nationality, was drafted by Lenin for the Russian Social Democratic Labor Group in the Fourth Duma. This bill was to have been introduced in the Duma, apparently in connection with the discussion of the Ministry of the Interior's budget. In publishing this bill on behalf of the RSDL group, Lenin considered it a point of honor on the part of the Russian workers to support it with tens of thousands of signatures and declarations. Quote, "This," said Lenin, "will be the best means of consolidating complete unity, amalgamating all the workers of Russia, irrespective of nationality." So I agree. I think that this was an excellent effort. And just to summarize what Lenin said about it, he said the bill aims at abolishing all national restrictions on all nations, Jews, Poles, and everyone else. But it deals in particular with the restrictions against the Jews, and the reason is that no nationality was so immensely oppressed and persecuted as the Jewish. So that's important to say. There's nothing socialist about trying to wave away forms of oppression that are not specifically class-based. As Lenin said, this is the best means of consolidating complete unity and bringing together all the workers of Russia, irrespective of nationality. We just put up Stalin's Marxism and the National Question, which is all about this. Marxists seek to limit and reduce and eliminate national strife. The national project is fundamentally a bourgeois project, and proletarian internationalism seeks to overcome it, not to reinforce it. There are a few limited cases, particularly in the cases of just emerging capitalism, where sometimes workers may choose to get involved in a bourgeois-led national liberation struggle or struggle against national oppression. But as soon as possible, this should be converted into a proletariat-led struggle for internationalism. The last point I want to make on this is where Lenin says, obviously, we do not look to the nationalist Purishkevich Fourth Duma to abolish the restrictions against the Jews and other non-Russians, but it is the duty of the working class to make its voice heard, and the voice of the Russian workers must be particularly loud in protest against national oppression. So what's he saying here? Is that the Fourth Duma was dominated by nationalists and really even like early fascists like Purishkevich. So was the RSDLP, this group of Marxists, really affecting that, a nationalist, even fascist, severely reactionary dominated parliament was really going to solve the Jewish question? Purishkevich was extremely anti-Jewish. So no, of course they did not think so. That's why they said they do not look to the Duma to abolish these restrictions. However, they felt that it was the duty of the working class to make this protest, and in particular for the Russian workers. And this was a thing within the Russian Empire at that time, there was basically privilege of the, quote, Great Russian, that is Russian proper, not Ukrainian or any of the other nationalities within the Russian Empire. They felt that it was important for the most privileged, centered, Great Russian workers to say clearly, we reject this oppression. So, we don't consider ourselves little czars or little bourgeoisie. We are internationalist proletarians. We stand in solidarity with the oppressed Jews, although we ourselves are not Jews. And we don't want the government doing this oppression in our name. This is a formal protest, etc. So Lenin adds, it goes without saying that the Jewish question can effectively be solved only together with the fundamental issues confronting Russia. So to really get something done on this, there would have to be other fundamental issues that move as well. But again, they felt it was important to make this statement. And, you look at the kind of reactionary whining that supposed, totally half-assed, quote, Marxists try to do today. Anytime that women's rights or race or, any of these other questions that are not specifically class in and of themselves come up, I'm sorry, but this isn't Marxist and it's not Marxist-Leninist. So anyway, let's continue on to the second text. This is called National Equality. It was published in Put Pravdy number 62, April 16, 1914. Source is Lenin Collected Works, Progress Publishers, 1972. Moscow, Volume 20, translated by Bernard Isaacs and the late Joe Feinberg. HTML transcription and markup by R. Simbala. And again, it's in the Lenin Internet Archive at Marxists.org. Let's read. Input Pravdy number 48 for March 28. the Russian Social Democratic Labor Group in the Duma published the text of its bill on national equality, or, to quote its official title, Bill for the Abolition of All the Disabilities of the Jews and All Restrictions on the Grounds of Origin or Nationality. That's the one we just read. Amidst the alarms and turmoil of the struggle for existence, for a bare livelihood, the Russian workers cannot and must not forget the yoke of national oppression under which the tens and tens of millions of subject peoples inhabiting Russia are groaning. The ruling nation, the Great Russians, constitute about 45% of the total population of the empire. Out of every 100 inhabitants, over 50 belong to, quote, subject peoples, i.e. not Russians proper. And the conditions of life of this vast population are even harsher than those of the Russians. The policy of oppressing nationalities is one of dividing nations. At the same time, it is a policy of systematic corruption of the people's minds. The Black Hundred's plans are designed to foment antagonism among the different nations, to poison the minds of the ignorant and downtrodden masses. Comment, who are the Black Hundreds? These were extreme reactionaries, monarchists, people who were violently committed to upholding the status quo at that time. Pick up any Black Hundred newspaper and you will find that the persecution of non-Russians, the sowing of mutual distrust between the Russian peasant, the Russian petty bourgeois, and the Russian artisan on the one hand, and the Jewish, Finnish, Polish, Georgian, and Ukrainian peasants, petty bourgeois and artisans on the other, is meat and drink to the whole of this Black Hundred gang. So comment, what would be the equivalent of this kind of media today? Things like Breitbart, Fox News, PragerU, all the other reactionary trash that gets funded by billionaires and is put out there to, well, sow mutual distrust between people of different nationalities, etc., etc. Continuing. But the working class needs unity, not division. It has no more bitter enemy than the savage prejudices and superstitions which its enemies sow among the ignorant masses. The oppression of subject peoples is a double-edged weapon. It cuts both ways, against the subject peoples and against the Russian people. That is why the working class must protest most strongly against national oppression in any shape and form. It must counter the agitation of the Black Hundreds, who try to divert its attention to the baiting of non-Russians, by asserting its conviction as to the need for complete equality, for the complete and final rejection of all privileges for any one nation. The Black Hundreds carry on a particularly venomous hate campaign against the Jews. The Purishkeviches try to make the Jewish people the scapegoat for all their own sins. And that is why the RSDL group in the Duma did right in putting Jewish disabilities in the forefront of its bill. The schools, the press, the parliamentary rostrum, everything is being used to sow ignorant, savage, and vicious hatred of the Jews. This dirty and despicable work is undertaken not only by the scum of the Black Hundreds, but also by reactionary professors, scholars, journalists, and members of the Duma. Millions and thousands of millions of rubles are spent on poisoning the minds of the people. It is a point of honor for the Russian workers to have this bill against national oppression backed by tens of thousands of proletarian signatures and declarations. This will be the best means of consolidating complete unity, amalgamating all the workers of Russia, irrespective of nationality. That's the end of the audiobook. So there's something I'd like to highlight here before we close. It's where Lenin says, "But the working class needs unity, not division. It has no more bitter enemy than the savage prejudices and superstitions which its enemies sow among the ignorant masses. The oppression of subject peoples," and this is the big part, "the oppression of subject peoples, the more oppressed minorities, is a double-edged weapon. It cuts both ways, against these subject peoples and against the Russian people. That is why the working class must protest most strongly against national oppression in any shape and form." And then Lenin concludes by saying it's a point of honor for the Russian workers, and Russian is emphasized, to have this bill against national oppression backed by tens of thousands of proletarian signatures and declarations. So the point here is the right-wing media, and particularly the most reactionary of it, really puts out this blatant sort of call to hatred and racism and national oppression. And the target is not the ruling class. They're a tiny minority, and they're already in charge. The target is, to quote Lenin, poisoning the minds of the ignorant and downtrodden masses. So you have average working people, the system barely gave them an education, and or they might not have made the most use of whatever education they were given, and they have the numbers. They're the majority of the population. So the ruling class needs their buy-in into ruling class ideology to enforce the kind of divisive ideology that's going to keep the ruling class on top. This is why Lenin calls it a double-edged sword. The ideology is obviously intended to oppress the, quote, subject peoples, in this case the non-Russians within the Russian Empire. But what does that do? Well, every Russian worker who stands there swinging the sword of hatred against these other nationalities and trying to get some sense of superiority or just favor from their own exploiters, the ruling class, for doing so on their behalf. But as they do that, they get cut by it themselves, because those people who they're helping the ruling class to oppress are their own potential allies against the class exploitation that the ruling class is perpetrating against both of them. And one of the incentives it's important to mention for people, engaging in this kind of thing, committing class suicide, as it were, is that the short-term or even immediate gain of whatever sort of national privilege belonging to that nationality which is the most favored, or treated the least harshly by the exploiting class, that tiny scrap of privilege sometimes seems more worth it to that worker who engages in that kind of oppression than, the potentially, quote, faraway utopian dream of overthrowing the exploiters. In other words, that, in the case of the United States, whiteness can be an immediate short-term thing, an extreme compromise, because it doesn't get you that far, to say the least. All it really helps with is avoiding some of the absolute worst treatment, and sometimes not even that. Well, that, immediate tiny thing, for some people, they think that it's worth totally giving up on the longer-term project, which is much more fundamental and would result in a revolutionary realigning of society. We know that such a revolutionary realigning of society involving the abolition of capitalism is possible. It's been done in multiple countries. But for the people who have bought the line that this is a fiction, a fantasy, not really possible, some of them very cynically buy in to, that little tiny crumb that the ruling class throws them of, hey, you're in the favored nationality among the exploited. We will be whatever percentage less horrible to you, and you get somebody to look down on. A lot of people do cynically take that as the consolation prize, and also not just as a sort of rational calculation. The ruling class doesn't really leave that up to chance. They try to lean on the scale as much as possible because in along all the messaging of bigotry and national hatred, etc., they mix in strong anti-communist, anti-socialist, anti-Marxist messaging. And it all has one effect, trying to force workers into thinking that this is the best you can do. You buy into our system of exploitation, and if you have the right skin color or are the right religion or whatever, then we will be X% less horrible to you, and you get somebody to look down on. This doesn't absolve workers who participate in that oppression from their responsibility. Ultimately, we are all responsible. It's the historical duty of the working class to abolish capitalism and build socialism. But as we socialists go about conducting our agitation and education, bear in mind that these are some of the things that you're going to come up against in people's minds, and some of the things that you're going to need to attack. So attack them you should. Point them out, call them out, encourage absolutely as much questioning of that exploiter logic and exploiter ideology as you can. Stand up to oppression to set the example every time that you can. And Lenin set a great example for this, one that we can continue to emulate today and keep setting that example for other working people in the present and future as we continue to build the unity required to abolish capitalism and build socialism. We're going to leave it there. What do you think? Leave a question or comment below in the comment section. We'll continue the discussion there as always. Otherwise, thanks for listening. And thanks to the current patrons whose names are on the screen. If you'd like to get your name on the screen, head to patreon.com/socialismforall. You can sign up for as little as $2 a month or more. We don't run ads on this channel, so that support is really important, and it's allowed me, in addition to being encouraging, to spend a lot more time on this channel than I would have been able to do without it. So really, all the engagement helps, liking, sharing, subscribing, etc. All of that helps YouTube to recommend this content to more people. But again, special thanks to the patrons. And remember to join the struggle in your local community, organized. It's one thing we really can't do through a YouTube channel. We can do agitation, we can do education, but the organizing, that's up to you. So take what you've learned here, bring it into your community, whether it's a labor union, tenant union, political party, other sort of community organizing. It's important to meet the capitalists where they're at and to combat exploitation wherever it intersects with our lives. All right, thanks again, and we will catch you in the next video.